There's like 42,000 different exercises people use to try to get better at this strange sport called arm wrestling. Everyone has their own homemade handles, homemade pulley systems, and of course their own homemade exercises to go with it. The efficacy of some of these exercises is, questionable. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. Rather, what we're going to talk about is out of all of these strange homemade exercises, which is the very most impressive? Which exercise reflects the most arm wrestling specific strengths? Today, we will be analyzing Devon Larratt's infamous hook cheat lift and then comparing it to other super impressive lifts from people like Armis Gasparini and Levan Saginashvili. Let's begin. So first and foremost, let's take a look at Devon Larratt's lift. The thing about this lift that makes it so great is not necessarily the weight, although it is very impressive, but the thing that makes this lift so awesome is its measurability. A lot of times in arm wrestling you have lifts that don't end up being all too consistent because of the way that they're set up. But this lift that Devon is doing is essentially the Olympic style squat of arm wrestling. One thing that happens when you have people competing in powerlifting is sometimes when they do the squat, you end up having complaints that certain people didn't actually squat down to parallel, that the lift was not identical to another lift. Whereas if you have someone doing an Olympic style squat, this complaint is not going to arise because they're squatting all the way through parallel as low as they can possibly go. So if you're going to do an arm wrestling style bicep lift, the point in the lift that you must reach for the maximum amount of weight to actually be attacking your bicep is right around here, right at parallel, where your forearm is parallel to the ground. This means that 100% of this weight is actually going to be attacking your elbow flexor and in this case some internal shoulder rotation. Say that Devon goes down and he stops the lift right here and then he just goes right back up. That's still an arm wrestling related lift, but the problem is it's not going to be measurable because only a small percentage of this weight was actually attacking Devon's elbow flexor. So the beauty of this lift is that not only does Devon not stop at parallel, but he actually goes all the way past parallel. He goes through parallel, well beyond it. So there is no question that 100% of this weight is attacking Devon's elbow flexor, which by the way is 80.8 kilograms or around 177 pounds. So this lift is super impressive and it's just so measurable, so you know 100% for certain that no matter what position you're in, your bicep or your kind of defensive hook position is going to be able to handle at least 177 pounds if you complete this lift. So now let's compare this to a much more recent lift in Armis Gasparini's back pressure lift. This lift is very similar to Devon's. It's going to be combining some back pressure and some side pressure, and you're trying to lift as much weight as you can from a static position. So Armis does go ahead and manage to lift 95 kilograms here, which as far as I'm aware is a world record in a strict back pressure lift. But this lift is quite a bit different from Devon's lift. The main reason that this is different, first of all, is that Armis' hand is in a more neutral grip instead of a more supinated grip, but this isn't as important. The main difference here is that you can see when the weight actually begins to move, that Armis is not in a position where 100% of this weight is attacking his elbow flexor. And this is because this strap that Armis is lifting from, it's not perpendicular to Armis' forearm. If the strap was perfectly perpendicular to Armis' forearm, or in other words, it made a 90-degree angle, this would indicate that 100% of that weight was actually attacking Armis' elbow flexor. But unfortunately in this case, you can see that this angle is not at 90 degrees. So this means that not all 95 kilograms of weight is actually attacking Armis' elbow flexor, but some of that force is just compressing Armis' forearm bone. So this is still a super impressive lift, and clearly it makes a huge carryover to the table because Armis was able to do extremely well against Levan Saginashvili. The only difference is this lift is not as measurable as Devon Larratt's lift. And since we're talking about bicep-driven lifts, we absolutely have to look at Levan's 134 kilogram curl. That's right, 134 kilograms. This is just absolutely ridiculous. So we can see that when Levan is lifting this, he's in a position more similar to Devon's where he is a little bit supinated. This isn't as standard of a normal back pressure lift, but it is more of a bicep-driven lift. But Levan's lift is actually more similar to Armis in the sense that he isn't going all the way down to parallel. So notice at the very lowest portion of the lift, you can see just the bottom of Levan's forearm, and the angle that he is making here is not at parallel to the ground. If Levan's forearm reached a parallel to the ground place, then this lift would be significantly more measurable. So it's not that this isn't impressive, this is an extremely impressive lift, it's super heavy. The issue is it's just a little bit difficult to measure exactly how impressive this is. Whereas if Levan had lowered the weight all the way down to parallel, then we would know that 100% of that weight was attacking his elbow flexor, and this would be very measurable. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Devon is stronger than Levan because of the lift he did. I think that Levan probably could beat Devon's lift any time that he wanted to, he simply hasn't tried it yet. But in terms of measurability, I think that Devon's lift is still more measurable than this one. So now let's take a look at a much more recent Devon Larratt lift. How does Devon's training of today stack up to his training of a while back? Here we see Devon lifting 165 pounds, so a little bit over 10 pounds less, and this time he's not doing the exact same lift, but it's a similar lift in that it's highly driven by the elbow flexor, and in this case he is adding in pronation as a limiting factor of the lift. But notice again how even Devon here is not lifting this with a forearm angle that is exactly parallel to the ground. His forearm angle is a little bit steeper than parallel to the ground, meaning that not 100% of this weight is actually attacking that forearm angle. And the same thing can be said about the pronator, as this strap is kind of running down Devon's forearm a little bit instead of running down his hand. So once again, this is a very impressive lift. However, I don't think that it is necessarily quite as impressive as the hook cheat lift, and it is certainly not as measurable. And if you guys did not know, Devon Larratt's hook cheat lift actually ended up getting broken by Gennady Kvykvinya a little bit more recently, so we're going to look at that one now. And Gennady Kvykvinya ended up lifting 2 more kilograms, or a little bit less than 2 more kilograms than Devon, but he does it for 2 repetitions, and it probably even looks a little bit easier than Devon's lift. So notice once again how when Gennady is lifting this weight, he doesn't just stop at parallel, which maybe would be right around here, but instead he goes through the range of motion of parallel, he passes all the way through it, making 100% sure that the entirety of this weight is attacking his bicep. So there's absolutely no way to cheat this lift here as long as you passed well through that range of parallel, and then he lifts it back up through that range of parallel. So there's no way to cheat this lift. This lift is extremely measurable. And after doing this, Gennady can know with certainty that his bicep is more than capable of withstanding at least 82 kilograms in that position. So is Devon Larratt's Hook Training 2 video the most impressive arm wrestling lift of all time? I think for a while it actually may have been the most impressive lift, but as we know, there have been a lot of people who probably were capable of breaking this record, and finally Gennady Kvykvinya went ahead and tried it, and he was able to break it by a little over 1 kilogram. So I think that this lift is super impressive, super measurable, but I think that Gennady's 82 kilogram lift is more impressive, and to be honest, if at any point Levan just decides to simply try this lift, I'm pretty confident that he could break it at any point he wanted to. But let me know what you guys think about this. Which arm wrestling lift do you think is the craziest lift of all time?